Laravel Boost does a great job of giving lots of context to AI agents about Laravel applications and how to build them. But there's a couple of things I like to add on top. So I'm going to come into my .ai/guidelines directory, and here I'm going to set up a new section called Development Guidelines. I'm going to add a few bullet points, and we're going to go through these and talk through why I think each is useful. So number one, when implementing any new functionality that would affect the project's installation process, update the README to reflect the new steps. Now, it's really, really easy for READMEs to get out of sync as an application grows, and you're working on an application for a year, then you onboard someone else, you have a new developer join, and they try and set up, and some of the commands don't work. With this, if you're using AI to do anything like this, you can make sure that it stays up to date. Next, never include comments in the code unless absolutely necessary. If you feel like you need to add a comment, consider if the code can be refactored to be more readable instead. I find that basically every LLM out there really likes to add comments to code, and this doesn't necessarily solve it, but I'm seeing a lot less comments with this in here. Next, mimic the code style of the existing project, use existing libraries and utilities, and follow existing patterns. Sometimes I've seen LLMs come in and start to create something entirely unexpected, building something in a different way than the rest of the application was built. For example, if I was using the action pattern, then it might come along and make a controller instead of creating an action that is then used in the controller. And this helps tell it just figure out what's already there and how that should work. And the last one here, I think is really important, especially as Laravel developers, which is focus on creating code that provides an excellent developer experience, good auto-completion, type safety, and comprehensive doc blocks. So by having all of this, we're trying to get it to write code that we would want to read as a human and will help us understand it. I'm going to come in and make another guideline file here for something that I like to do. And that's creating guidelines specifically for PHP. And so I'm going to paste in some guidelines here, and we're going to see exactly what they are. So I'm going to call this Write Great PHP Code. Not just good, write great PHP code. I want it to use the latest PHP features like short closures, the null safe operator, constructor promotion, and mostly match expressions. I find that often LLMs are a bit out of date and they don't really know what they can and cannot use, and because they're trained on existing code that's out there, the majority of the code they're trained on is going to be using any kind of old features and patterns. So by explicitly telling it we want it to use the latest things and calling out what those latest things are, it's going to be more likely to use them. Also tell it never to include a doc block when a type hint can be sufficient, only if the doc block can be more specific. And this is going to help us when we introduce static analysis and are just browsing the code through our IDE. This is very much a personal one, but with Laravel, I prefer to favor dependency injection over facades, and to avoid using facades unless they're really necessary. Just to help things be a little bit more unit testable in a traditional PHP way. There's a lot of opinions on that, but this is the way I prefer to do it. I also like to implement proper error handling and logging, which is something that can be missed really easily, but if you tell an LLM to do it, it's going to be more likely to do it than a real person, in my opinion. So tell it use Laravel's exception handler and logging features as it needs, create custom exception classes when it's necessary, use try-catch blocks for expected exceptions rather than just letting things fall through. Always prefer to import classes using the use statement rather than using fully qualified class names in the code. And after writing any or changing any code, run composer fix to automatically fix any code styles. This is a really useful thing, and it's not something we've set up right yet. So I'm just going to take a look at that and set it up. We've got our composer script here, and we've got the one for running dev commands and for running tests. So we're going to set up a new one, and we're going to call it fix. And essentially this is going to be running tools like Prettier for us. what we can see we've got in the package.json, we've set up this format command. So let's come back and get it to run pnpm run format, and also pnpm run lint, because that's going to run this linter, which is set up to fix things as well. On top of that, I don't know if we've got it just yet, but we do have Laravel point in here. So if I come back, then if we run point, we're going to see that makes a bunch of changes to our application. This is something that's built in with Laravel, and it's just going to make code styles a little bit more consistent. In this case, it's just adding some empty lines to the end of the files, but in other cases, it will format things like Laravel's code style, like adding a space where there wasn't one here before. So that's the main thing we really want to run, because I think in this application, we're going to be doing a lot of PHP stuff. So I'm just going to get it to run vendor bin point. So now if I run composer run fix, it should run through all three of these commands and fix all of my PHP code and run prettier over all of my JavaScript and CSS and Blade code, and then run ESLint as well. By running this one command, it's going to go through and fix all of the code. Now, by telling AI to run this composer fix command after any change that it makes, it's just going to make it really, really consistent. So you're not going to commit things and then get linting errors back. It's always going to be the correctly formatted code, even if AI writes it slightly wrong compared to what you want. I'm going to come back here and create yet another guideline. This one I'm going to call testing. And I'm going to paste in the rules here. So when asked to write a test, I never want AI to start with the implementation. I want it to just write the test. If I want the implementation, I will ask for the implementation later down the line. Every time a test has been updated, it should run the test to ensure that it's still passing. You don't want an LLM to be making changes to your tests and then just having them fail and be completely unaware about it, because it's going to go down the wrong path and get a lot more wrong later down the line. When I ask it to write a test as well, I don't want it to start fixing other parts of the test or the implementation code. A lot of the time you'll be vibing and working on something and you'll get some linter errors or some other things going on. Maybe you've been hacking on something yourself and you're just getting an LLM to jump in and help out with a bit here and there. But you don't want it to get distracted. If an LLM gets distracted, it can go down a rabbit hole, use so many tokens, waste so much time. You just want it to focus on the thing that you're telling it to do, which in this case is writing the test. I also tell it, if it's ever created any new code, generate a test for it. Make some assertions against that new code, because TDD is something that most people don't do. Writing tests is something that most people don't do. But if you have an LLM making your code and tests for you, that saves you so much time and gives you so much more confidence in your code. I also tell it, if it's ever refactored or restructured code, run the tests again. Because that's not necessarily creating code, but you still want to make sure that it's valid. And when testing models, this is something I found a lot in Laravel applications specifically. I always want it to prefer feature tests when testing models, because while you can do things in unit tests with models, there's a lot of implicit behavior that might be based on the database. And by using feature tests, you get that kind of built in without having to worry about mocking and faking lots of different dependencies. And the very last thing is, I find AI does a lot of things that is a little bit too general and vague. For example, when I'm making some changes to a model class, I'll find that an LLM will come in and start writing tests for making sure that the array casts are working and everything else. And these can be valuable tests, but to be honest, this is basic Laravel behavior. And anything that Laravel does out of the box, I'm kind of expecting that to just continue working. And so I don't want it to overload my test files with lots of things I don't really care about. I want it to focus on things that are my application's business logic and to write tests for those things. So by adding these extra few lines of context to my AI guidelines, I can now come in, I can run boost install -- silent, and it's going to include these new files in the generated file. I can go back and look at my instructions file, and I'm going to see it's added all of these things. And so anytime I'm using, or anyone else on the team is using an LLM to help build this application, it's going to build things kind of the way that we personally want it to work.